Hello, my name is James Mulvaney. Welcome to this video. I've been an entrepreneur for over 15 years. In this time, I've started probably coming up to half a dozen different businesses. Some have been very successful, some have not been very successful. And what I want to do in this video is address the 6 most common fears that people have when they're starting a business. So here are the 6 biggest things that a lot of people come to me and say, James, I'm thinking of starting a business, but there's just these barriers, they're just holding me back. So the plan of the video today is to address these fears, give you a plan of action to get going and take things forward. So number 1 on the list is not being good enough. A lot of entrepreneurs will doubt their ability, especially if perhaps you've never run a business before. You might be worried what people think, you might be worried what clients think. Now, the best advice I can give you here is really it's not an issue, because as long as you're putting your 100% effort in and you're putting your best foot forward when you're speaking to people, it's really about crafting a perception or an experience for customers that instills confidence in them. So when I started out, I was 16 years old and I was literally a kid in his bedroom. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. But what I did do very well was build a good brand, a solid website, and the language on the website, the way I spoke to clients, they would have no idea that there was this little kid sat behind this operation working out of his mum and dad's bedroom. Obviously, things have moved on since then, but the point I'm trying to make is you don't need anything to get started. And as long as you can create a perception that you have a good product, and you should have a good product, by the way. You should never try and sell something that you don't believe in 100%. But you can always find other people to help you out. Actually, when I got started, I was going into the kind of web hosting and streaming media world. This was back in 2004, which sounds like a really long time ago now. And I didn't know anything about how to set up servers. I didn't really know how to code websites very well. I had some good Photoshop skills, but that was about it. So what I did was I went out and found someone online who kind of knew a lot about this stuff, and kind of negotiated an agreement with him where I wouldn't pay him until he'd done the work and that kind of stuff. So there's always ways to circumvent problems. Perhaps if you don't think you're good enough, go and find people who are. So that's my first bit of advice for you. So secondly, the next biggest fear that people have when they come to start a business is of the competition. Now, why people are scared of the competition, I don't quite understand, because actually if there's some competition in a marketplace, it can be a good thing, because number 1, it proves that there's demand there. It proves that there is actually a business opportunity. Number 2, quite often competition can be a good thing, because a lot of the competitors probably have been around for some time. They might not actually be that good, and they might be complacent. So if you can go in and sort of pull the rug from under their feet and snap up some of their customers by doing something different and actually doing something better than what they're doing, it can be a good opportunity. And also I think the other thing with competition is it can be healthy, because it can keep you on your toes. It can keep you moving forward and making sure that you're trying to deliver the best possible results to your customers that you can. So that's my perspective on competition. As I say, the main thing is if there's competition there, it proves that there's market, it proves that there's money to be made. Okay, so next up, what happens if I fail? This is a question that so many entrepreneurs have. I still get caught up about this sometimes, but ultimately failing can be a great thing. I know that sounds kind of a bit weird, maybe sort of slightly unnatural. I don't want to fail at something, I want the success. However, sometimes when you try something and fail, it can teach you a lot of valuable lessons. Especially in business, if you fail quickly, sometimes it can save you a lot of time and money. Like let's say that you're thinking about bringing a new product to market, or you're thinking about entering a new market. Well, sometimes failure can be the best thing, because it can prove that actually you're just wasting your time there. And also valuable lessons are learned along the way. So I think most successful entrepreneurs, you'll find that they've had a few successes, but they have had a lot of failures. It's quite a common trait if you're starting businesses. And obviously there is this big statistic that most businesses fail within the first couple of years. So ultimately, yes, it's something that doesn't sound that appealing at first glance. There are positives that you can draw from it, but really it's just the nature of the beast. So the other thing, when you're getting started, a lot of people are scared of the overwhelm. And this is basically, when you first start a business, especially if you're starting out on your own, which is what I did. You are, the sales guy, the marketing guy, the customer support guy, or girl, and you might be doing computer programming, which is what I was doing, like learning on the job basically. Also how to build websites and operations, everything, the finance, the accounting, all of this stuff you need to take into consideration when you're starting out and starting a business. And yes, it can seem very, very overwhelming at first. I had the benefit of being really young when I started, and I think that was kind of good because I had sort of like limitless energy and also a kind of huge desire to learn. So, you act like a sponge when you're at that age. You can just absorb as much information as possible. However, there were a few things from the get-go that I decided I didn't want to do. So the first thing I did was went and found a good accountant, for example, because I knew that I wasn't really interested in learning how to prepare my own books and prepare my own accounts. As I mentioned earlier in this video, I wasn't particularly technical when I started out. So what I went and did was I found someone who knew about the techie stuff, who was kind of almost like a partner. He was actually based on the other sside of the world in Australia, right? So I said to him, we'll give you a share of what we do, and we'll work together. And of course, it sort of alleviated some of that initial overwhelm of the process. So as I say, going out and finding people who you can rely on, I think can be really, really valuable, and sort of building the A team around you, if you like. It's important to at least make the connections, even if you don't necessarily hire them. You make the connections, so then say, in 6 months' time, your business is starting to do well and it's time to think about preparing your first year's worth of accounts. Well, you know which accountant you're going to use. So it's one less job to do. I've always been a big believer in making a good work-life balance. Now, whether that's just setting yourself strict working hours, it's tempting when you start a business just to work on it all hours of the day. And indeed, I used to be very guilty of this. Sometimes I was at university, I'd be getting home 2 o'clock in the morning from a night out, and I'd be literally sort of sat on my computer doing work. Or, I'd be, working till 11 p.m. at night. I think that's fine. And I think to some extent, you have to put the hours in, you have to put in some hard work. You've got to work smart though, as well as hard. Just working hard doesn't necessarily achieve results. I think working smart is very, very important too. Especially if you say have a family. I think it's just about setting some clear boundaries from the outset. So you make sure that you're giving your personal life enough time and your work life enough time as well. I think the other thing as well is just being organized. If you've got stuff to do, just try and work at it in a systematic way. I think also having a plan of action can be really, really important from day one. Actually look at each working day, split it down into half an hour chunks. I think I used to split mine down into 15-minute chunks and literally just plan out your day. What are the objectives? What are the tasks that need doing on that day? Be systematic about the process rather than just trying to do 10 things at once and not do them very well. Look at each task you have and address them one by one. And being systematic about things is really, really helpful because it gives you a clear plan, and it can ultimately prevent you just from that overwhelm factor and sort of being burnt out very quickly. Finally, number 6 is the fear of the unknown. A lot of people don't like to jump into something that they don't know what the outcome is going to be. And it's very hard to predict the outcome of a business idea or a market when you're entering it. You can do all of the market research in the world. You can write the biggest business plan ever. And by the way, I've never spent hours and hours and hours working on a business plan. I've come up with, sort of brief documents for things like finance purposes, etc. But I've never crafted one of these 60-page dossiers of how I'm going to run my business. I just don't think there's any point. I think as long as you've got a rough plan of action, and you can start breaking down individual tasks into actionable points, and you have to have a little bit of a plan. But God, I see so many entrepreneurs who are just writing this big business plan, and then when it doesn't go to plan, they kind of freak out and they're not sure exactly what to do. So I think one of the most important things to do is know what you're doing, but ultimately be prepared for things not to go the way that you anticipate, because ultimately that is what happens when you run a business. That's what happens when you are an entrepreneur. You have to be excellent at problem solving. So I think the fear of the unknown for some people, probably me included, is kind of exciting because actually, something doesn't go to plan or something doesn't go according to your 60-page document, then shit, you've got to suddenly think about what to do and how to fix it. So I think that's part of the fun of being in business. However, you have to be prepared for it, and ultimately, you know, you can spend all the time in the world preparing for something and it might not go to plan. So I think that's the best advice I can give in terms of the fear of the unknown. But ultimately, you know, the unknown is fun. I think, you know, because that's part of the spontaneity of being a business is you can try different ideas, and you know, you can craft your own destiny ultimately, as cheesy as that sounds. So ultimately, to round up this video, you know, I think the best advice really is just to get on with it and just really get to work. Ultimately, you can think about things until the cows come home, as they say, but just actually taking action really stands for a lot. And again, you've probably heard this time and time again, but it really is true. Just get out there and do something.
There is an easier way to get booked onto more podcasts as a guest. Join matchmaker.fm for free today and start making connections with podcasters who are looking for guests just like you.